And we will seek, in the process of the UN and in the effort to have a global commitment to this, help from many other of our international partners. But we're convinced the urgency of this will be a test for the international community's commitment to the Chemical Weapons Convention and to the importance of restraining chemical weapons and weapons of mass destruction. So I think the global community will participate, and this can be achievable. As to where it is destructed, the experts really need to make determinations about individual weapons. Some can be destroyed on the site, many cannot, and that's something that will have to be part of the CWC process that will be contained in the extraordinary procedures that we've called for.
Насчет того, кто будет платить, вы наверняка слышали.
Probably you have heard there were countries which were ready to pay the war. I'm sure there will be countries, if not this one, other countries, which are ready to pay peaceful solution of this problem.
The next question will be from David Lerman of Bloomberg.
We're going to send Sergey to talk to them and make that arrangement.
Mr. Secretary?
Yes.
David Lerman from Bloomberg. Sir, just 5 days ago in London, when you first floated this idea publicly, you seemed to dismiss it at the time by saying Assad would never do it, and, quote, it can't be done, obviously. My question, sir, is how did the impossible suddenly become possible? And why is it credible to think that you can send these inspectors in on the ground in the middle of a civil war?
Sure.
And as a practical matter, if you really want to get thorough, verifiable inspections in all corners of the country, don't you have to stop the fighting first?
Let me answer both questions. I purposely made the statements that I made in London, and I did indeed say it wasn't possible and he won't do it, even as I hoped it would be possible and wanted him to do it. And the language of diplomacy sometimes requires that you put things to the test, and we did. Sergey and I had been talking even 3 days before that about this very concept. We had 2 phone calls on the Thursday and Friday before it. And I got a phone call very quickly from Sergey saying, let's see if we can take this and move. And he talked to his president, and they talked, the presidents talked in St. Petersburg, and the rest is history. We're here. So obviously, I would hope and always hope that we could have removed those weapons, and we wanted to. But we didn't know whether or not this could be given the kind of life it has been given in the last 48 hours. So it just didn't make sense to raise a concept that hadn't yet been put to the test or agreed upon or worked through. I'm pleased that President Putin took initiative, and Sergey took initiative, and President Obama responded, and we're here. And so the question is, so where do we go from here, and how do we build on this, which I think is really critical. Now, how do you do this, quote, in a time of war? Well, look, this is logical. One of the reasons that we believe this is achievable is because the Assad regime has taken extraordinary pains in order to keep control of these weapons. And they have moved them, and we know they've moved them. We've seen them move them. We've watched this. And so we know they've continued to always move them to a place of more control. Therefore, since these weapons are in areas under regime control predominantly, Sergey raises questions of maybe the opposition has some here or there, and absolutely, fair is fair. Both sides have to be responsible. If they do, that also, and that may present a larger challenge. But those of us who have been supporting the opposition have a responsibility to help create access there, and the regime has responsibility where we believe the larger, the measure of, in fact, we believe the only weapons ought to be accessible because the Assad regime controls the access. So in point of fact, it shouldn't be in a contested area, largely because they've been working to keep it out of a contested area. And that is the sort of silver lining, if you will, in the way in which they have contained these weapons. So it's our expectation that with the cooperation of the international community, with adequate contribution of protection forces and of people to go on the ground, if the Assad regime is prepared to live up to its word, we should not have a problem achieving access to their sites. And that will quickly be put to the test.
Последний вопрос, телеканал «Звезда», Максим Додонов.
Звезда.
У меня два коротких вопроса, если можно.
Short question. First, please clarify.
Видели в фойе отеля.
We saw in the lobby of the hotel.
Политика, хотелось бы знать, с какими предложениями он сюда приехал.
I would like to know what proposals he brought here. Did he come to conduct the meeting with you?
Mr. Kerry, this is the same place, same building where 4 years ago Russia and the United States pushed the reset button. So after that conversation with Mr. Lavrov, do you think our countries might reset our relations again?
Well,
Why don't you? Yeah.
go ahead.
Please don't. I don't want you to start.
I think, as I said in my opening comments, we've had some differences here and there on certain issues. But we've also worked together cooperatively on many things. And Sergey Lavrov and I have never stopped talking. We have consistently been prepared to try to work to deal with issues. And that's why we did Geneva 1. And that's why we're here now with respect to this initiative. Now, on larger issues, on Iran, Russia and the United States cooperate. On North Korea, Russia and the United States cooperate. On WTO, we cooperate. On START Treaty, we cooperate. On the reduction of nuclear weapons, we've been cooperating. We just had a 2+2 meeting, which means the two secretaries of State and Defense meeting their counterparts from Russia in Washington, even in the midst of all the other hurly-burly about issues. And we had a very constructive meeting in which we laid out an agenda to continue to work on weapons of mass destruction, to continue to work on trade, to continue to work on other issues, even the issues that in the press get elevated into this question of reset, no reset, etc. So I hope Sergey feels the way I do. There are things we disagree on. But big nations, powerful nations, leaders cannot afford to get caught up in the small things. And President Putin, to his credit, despite real disagreement with our policy, despite a disagreement with where we were heading, reached out and tried to continue the dialogue. So I would say look for the glass being, half full rather than half empty, and let's see how we proceed from here.
Can you wait a second for me to answer the last question? Thank you.
This is what I've been doing for the last couple of days.
Что касается встречи
The meeting with Kofi Annan, I also doesn't have any official position, duty now, but he's very respected politician. He's a member of so-called Club of the Wise, takes part created by the fund in the support of UN. And the delegation was in Moscow. We met them. It's clear that after he handed over his mandate to special, and this mandates were handed to Bahimi. Kofi Annan is a political animal. He cannot forget about it, and as a personality, he takes care that there is less wars and more stability in the world. That's his concern. He's worried about it personally. And his meeting with him, he asked me to tell me how do we see the situation, how do we manage to agree with John. It was yesterday, but at the evening, it was clear that we were towards an agreement. We were moving towards an agreement, which has to get some legal obligations in Hague and in New York. I told honestly that we're very concerned. We were concerned about the attempts to undermine any efforts which are directed to pacify the situation, to remove some aspects, including what you have mentioned, the efforts which we undertake with John. I told him that in our negotiations, the most critical moment of negotiations, we suddenly saw, and on the screens, TV screens, the information that Ban Ki-moon, General Secretary of UN, Ban Ki-moon, told some women in some women's club then that the report of the inspectors which were investigating the incident of the good will be presented on Monday, that he cannot disclose the content, but it will say clearly this report that the chemical weapons were used, had been used. And then straight away there was some information that he says that Russia really many times committed some crimes. And then it turned out that it was set up, all these two phrases, that the report will contain confirmation of the use of chemical weapons. And the committee, they're not interlinked, that he meant the estimates by the International Commission, which was here in Geneva, where they mentioned in their reports the crimes against humankind. But all these channels, they showed in a row that there will be a report which confirms use of chemical weapons and that Bashar Assad a few times committed these crimes against humankind. If it is not somehow the chance which happened in connection with the access, because the network was closed. If it wasn't just such a misunderstanding, then just a deliberate attempt to undermine our meeting here. It was a deliberate attempt, but they failed to do so, to frustrate our attempt. In any cases of the use of the alleged use of chemical weapons, they need to be should be honestly and thoroughly investigated on the basis of facts. That's why everyone who is talking about that on the 21st weapons were used by the regime, they should probably wait for the conclusions of the report, and they will establish if it had been used or not. But these conclusions will be considered with the other evidence, which in respect who, why, and potentially could do something which happened on the 21st. If we so much attention pay to the strengthening of the role of the Security Council, we have to let's respect the Security Council. Let's preempt what the Security Council and the conclusions. Let's not preempt and speculate what they can make when they consider all the combination of facts of these events which took place and what preceded these events. It's necessary that the group of inspectors, headed by Mr. Sestrim, as soon as possible after the presentation of this part of their report, return to investigate the further incidents which were part of their mandate. I'm very concerned, Kofi Annan also, I told him I'm concerned that there is some ground to suspect the report which will be presented on Monday. Now they try to kind of camouflage it into some one direction in comparison what the inspectors have really written. We're glad that at the end of the day, the General Secretary decided, Mr. Sestrom personally with the President and the Security Council meeting, that all the issues which the members might have will be addressed directly to him. I want to apologize that for a long time I was dwelling on it so long because I was really he was concerned about it, and I shared with him my concern about these issues. What concerns the issue concerning John Kerry, I'd like to support you who have said his words. I said in my introduction that the agreements as today, in the most complex issue, at least this agreement, it hasn't become a law yet. It hasn't yet been approved in the corresponding structure, but it's a Russian-American initiative. Without any more false modesty, when we act together, we really manage to mobilize the support of the overwhelming majority of the international community. And by itself, it shows how important it is for us to rise above the things which somebody tries to make them not important in our relations, or to make an obstacle in the development, some bitterness, some trifles, some hard to understand of something artificial issues. I want to say the President at the meeting in Los Cabos last year, and also during other events, constantly stress that we should develop the cooperation. As John said, of course there are some discrepancies. We have joint goals to achieve a peaceful solution, and so the Syria remains an integral, civilized, well, all the minorities, groups, religious, confessional, will be in safety. But we have difference in the measures to be applied, where we sensed some joint approach, and on other issues we should act. On Monday, in Vienna opens a Magotech conference, and we also try to achieve an agreement concerning the use of nuclear weapons. So we are striving to achieve this, to conclude this agreement. We have a few agreements in the pipeline concerning drugs. There's a hotline set up with the Security Council on the problems of cyber security, and there were prepared some statements of the presidents on the tasks of the economic cooperation, and also a long-term course of the development of Russian-American relations. Though visit didn't take place of Mr. Obama, but the fact that the negotiators laid down the right things in the papers, it won't be lost. And if there's a good chance, and I hope it will be in Russia, all these issues and other documents, we'll sign these documents.
I was just thinking, Sergey, you could be a senator. Anyway, do we have any more? Are we finished? We're finished.
Thank you.
We have been listening to the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, and the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergey Lavrov, detailing details of a plan that they've agreed on to destroy, secure Syria's chemical weapons. Both sides thanking each other and pledging to try and work together to implement this plan. The Russian foreign minister saying that they understand that the agreement reached today is just the beginning of a long road on how to get Syria's